Hello, my name is Darryl, President of Vacuum Pressing Systems. In this video, we are going to talk about simply getting the air out of the bag. You might think, what do we need a video for this for? You hook the hose up to the bag and you pull the air out. But the reality is, it's not so simple as that. For two reasons. One, you want the air to get out of the bag as fast as the pump wants to pull it. And you don't want air trapped in corners of the bag. You want it very uniform. For this reason, there's basically two primary methods of getting the air out of the bag. And one is what's called a platen, which is basically a 3/4 inch MDF or particle board, not plywood, that has grooves in it, melamine coated or uncoated, doesn't really matter. The other thing is what's called a bleeder fabric, or I call a mesh, which is basically a plastic woven material that the air trickles down. What I want to discuss is when you use the platen, when you use the mesh, what's the advantage of either one. So we'll start by setting up and looking at a platen in a bag, and then we'll go on to look at a mesh in the bag and take it from there. So here I have a bag with a platen board in it. And this platen board is a piece of melamine coated 3/4 inch particle board. Now you don't need to have it be melamine coated like this is, but glue doesn't stick to it, so it's a little nicer. What a platen looks like is that it has grooves in it, just 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch grooves like you would run on a table saw. 10 inch on center, this is plenty. You don't need a bunch of little grooves, this is fine. The key here is in our system, there is a platen sleeve right there with grooves cut in it in both directions so the air can get down and out through the nipple. Our nipple is on the underside so that there's no obstruction when you're loading and unloading. If the nipple is on the top side and then the hose is hanging out, it can get in your way. This way, it's coming from up underneath and it's easy to slide out. Grooves allow the air to get down to the exit hole very quickly and efficiently, and a platen board also serves the purpose of giving you a nice surface to slide in and out of rather than sliding in on top of the bag, which can be more difficult, and also you could damage the bag. So now let's take a look at a bag with just the netting in it. So here we have a bag, once again, with the netting in it. It's just a piece of netting. We actually call this Evacuate. So here's the really important thing about this. As you can see, the netting ends right there, which if you draw a vacuum through the nipple, the top of the bag is going to suck right down onto that. So the really important thing is to always make sure the netting is over the nipple. Okay? So you could say that the advantage of the netting is you don't have to cut a board. You just cut a piece of the netting and slide it in. So it's very convenient, although it's not such a great surface to slide in and out of. Okay, so that's a basic view of the platen board and the Evacuate. Now I'd like to take a more in-depth look by actually pressing something with a platen board and Evacuate. Go into a little more detail of how these two techniques work. So let's do a close-up on this. So here we are with the platen set up again, but we need to hook the hose up, which on our bags come from the underside. So let's hook that up and I'll show you how that goes. I'm going to slide this brass fitting up through the nipple on the bag until it sticks inside. And then we're going to find the platen sleeve and push it up into that. What I like about the system here is that the platen and the bag nipple are now lined up together. So if you yank on the hose, you're not misaligning the brass fitting with the platen and the nipple on the bag. So there you have it. Now I'm going to slide this scrap piece of 1/2 inch MDF in the in the bag. Now again, this is a nice surface to slide in and out of, and the hose is coming up from the underneath, so you don't have anything in your way on the top side. So, well, we're not going to actually veneer anything. This is just a platen demo. So I'm going to put the closure on the bag, like so. Get a good seal. And then I'm going to turn on the vacuum and we'll suck this down. So while this is sucking down, which it's going to do very quickly, I'd like to talk about this notion that I don't know where it came from, but I know it's on the internet because I get asked this all the time about putting netting on top of your veneering piece with the platen board. And it is just totally unnecessary. The platen completely gets the air out in all corners of the bag, and your plywood, it can even suck the vacuum right through it. There is no need to be putting netting on top of your work. Now there's another notion, and that is that it's good as a caul. And for two reasons, it's bad as a caul on top of your work, because a caul is there to level your veneer and prevent it from wrinkling. And netting is too soft for that. So it's not going to serve that purpose. And also, it's not going to protect the corners. That's another idea that is really, your caul will, you'll soften the corners of the caul that goes on top of your veneer. That will take care of that. And also, you run the risk of the netting putting in indentation or an impression in your veneer. So you don't put it on top, and it doesn't come directly in contact with the veneer. And you got a platen board, you're good. So put that out. But what I would like to talk about is there is a time when you do use the netting, and I'd like to demonstrate what that is. And we'll go to a close-up of that now. Before we get to the fancier stuff, let's just have a look at just the netting as if it was the platen, the substitute platen. And as you can see, I have the netting. There's the exit nipple. So the netting is over that. So it's rather simple. Again, this is a small, easy panel to slide in. I would just slide it in, put the closure on, and suck that down. So, you know, it is a viable method. And especially, I think, for smaller work, it's not, you know, it's not so big that it's a big problem. Let's flip this over so you would see how it would work with the nipple up. Now, as I've said before, I'm not a real fan of nipple up. But there is one thing you can do, and that is that you can slide the whole bag up on the bench if you want to, so you don't have to overhang the end. But again, what I don't like is now this is hanging there. And I think it's in the way when putting a panel in and out. You know, now you've got the hose there. Again, it's not the end of the world, obviously, but so that is something. And then when it sucks down, it'll stand up anyway. So, and this is actually, nipple side up is an advantage over a platen board. And I'll cut to a platen board so you can see why nipple up is a little bit more of a problem. So with the nipple up combined with the platen board, it's really important that the nipple is touching two grooves so that the air can travel. So you could say that, yeah, it's tricky because if you aren't paying attention and your platen slides, and let's say the nipple is there, now it's just going to suck down on this and no air is going to get out of the bag. So for this type of nipple up, the Evacuat's a little bit better. The netting is better because all it has to do is touch the netting and you're fine. But again, I like the platen. Nipple side down works very well. Now let's take a look at curved work. This is where the netting is far more useful. For flat work, really the platen is the way to go. But for curved work, there's a couple instances where the netting is actually better. So we're going to start by looking at a curved panel with the platen and then go on to curved work with the netting. So I'm going to do a close-up of the flat platen style first. So here I have this setup where the form is in the bag. I have 3 layers of a 3/8 bendable plywood on top of the platen. This is rather obvious to say, but I call this the inside technique, which means the form and the laminations are in the bag together. There's also an outside technique, and this is where the netting comes in. So I'm just going to draw this down so you can see it. It's rather obvious, and then we'll move on to how you would use it in what is called the outside technique. Sometimes the bag can want to get up underneath the laminations a little bit, so I'm just going to hold the bag taut until it takes over, and then it takes care of that issue. And there you have it. The inside technique, platen, form, and laminations all are in the bag together. Now that we've looked at curved work with a platen, let's go on to a close-up of curved work with the netting. So in this setup, I have the form, again, except it's outside the bag, then the 3 layers of bendable plywood, and then the netting over that. And if you see here, the netting is around the nipple so that you're making contact. In this situation, the bag is not going to pull the laminations to the form. You have to do that. So I'm just going to do a simple, I'm just going to press it down like this. I have a foot switch to make this easier. And then when that sucks down, you can see it holds on its own. Even if I lift it off, it's still holding. So that's how you would do the outside technique. Now you might be thinking, why do that? Why not just put the form in the bag and let the bag suck it down? And in reality, for a small project like this, I would do that. But imagine you have an 8-foot form. And that form would be so heavy to get in the bag and suck it down. It's much easier to do it on the outside technique. Or let's say an arch jamb. That would be much easier. Or a spiral staircase stringer. There's a number of situations where it's just too cumbersome to get the form in the bag, and you have to make an incredibly stout, rugged form that can take 2 or 3 guys just to lift it to get it in the bag. So even though I'm showing it on a really small piece, it's really applicable on bigger work and more complicated work. But let's go back and look at that close-up again, because in reality, we would do it a little differently. I wouldn't do it with my bare hands, so I want to show you that. So let's do the close-up again. In reality, I would not really do this just with my hands, because I'm not going to get the pressure down real good at the ends. So this setup is the way it would really be done, where I would clamp with a 2x on here, and if it was much bigger, I might put a couple clamps on this. So this is all ready to go. Turn it on. And that's it. I would leave this until the glue sets and then take it out. Now there's one more situation where the netting has an advantage, and that is if you happen to have a curved panel that already exists. There are manufacturers where you can buy curved panels. Having a form is just not going to work. You can use the netting to great effect. So let's take a closer look at this technique. Here are a couple of panels that are already made. Now this one, I made it on a form so I could veneer it on the form because it I did it that way. But if I didn't, then I could veneer it. This one I'm pretty sure is a pre-bought half round. So I think I'll demonstrate this one. So let's slide it in the bag. Okay. And the netting is already in the bag. So I'm going to slide it, oh, let's say about to there. And then I'm going to put the closures on this and draw vacuum so you can see this process. So the bag is sealed up. I'm going to attach the vacuum hose, turn on the pump. Now there's one thing, I need to get the bag pushed up underneath, because if the bag is not roughly up underneath, you risk snapping the form, the panel, and there we go. So this is the other really good application for the netting. Now, if this was really a veneered panel, I'd have a cover sheet on top of it, and most likely I would veneer the inside at the same time. But this gives you an idea of, if you already have a panel, how you could use the netting. Now, there's one last method I'd like to talk about, which I kind of call a hybrid between the netting and the platen. And what it is it's a flexible platen. Basically, this is 3/8 bendable plywood for making curved panels. And what I've done, as you can see, is I've put some grooves in it. So it's like a platen because it's got grooves, and it's like netting because it flexes. And it can be really handy as another option. And let's take a closer look at what this looks like. So here's a closer look at this flexible platen. And as you see, there's the platen sleeve, just like in the regular platen. And I did a little something on the back so it would be a little thicker. And that is that I put a little block on, and then I put the platen sleeve in, cut it off flush, and then I ran my grooves. And the way this would work, so let's pretend this is a panel that hasn't been veneered, which it has been veneered on both sides. What we would do is we would take this, and there would be a caul, of course. So you would have a caul between the veneer and this platen. You don't want the glue to sense those grooves. So you've got your veneer, you have a caul, and then what you would do is you would put this on, right, like this, and put it in the bag, which we'll do, and I'll show you how this works. All right, I have the bag out, and this time I'm going to use the nipple facing up. And I've taken the flexible platen, and I've just used some shrink wrap to loosely, it's not perfectly on, just to loosely hold it in place so it's not sliding around on the curved panel. And this is a tip. I love this stuff, and I use it to hold especially curved work, but even flat panels. A 5-inch roll of stretch wrap. I think every shop should have one. So let's take this. We'll slide it in the bag. Put this in, that in there, line it up. Now, there you go. So now this is locked together. I'll put the closure on, and we'll draw the vacuum on it. Closure's on. It's all set up. Let me turn on the vacuum. And there you go. Perfect. Flexible platen does the job. So this concludes looking at netting platens when you would use one over another. I hope this has been informative, and it'll help you to make better decisions on what you use. On a side note, I use this little foot switch, and I find they're really handy when in situations where you need both hands but you want to turn on the pump. I highly recommend. I think Granger, McMaster-Carr, different suppliers sell these, and you hook them up to your pump, and it's a nice little addition. So that's it for this video, and stay tuned for more.